Well, hello, beautiful. Welcome to Dr. Sarah's Cafe. This is your weekly refill. I am, of course, Dr. Sarah. So, we kick off these weekly refills with what I call the flavor of the week. This is when I combine various sources of information, such as astrology and tarot, and my own personal relationship to those energies and understanding of those energies, right? And so, the flavor of this week is mental flora. Mental flora. And by mental flora, I mean the flowers of the mind. Okay. So the flowering mind. And I just happened to stumble upon this really lovely and beautiful depiction of a brain that's like half brain and half bouquet of flowers, which I think is quite lovely. But the reason or the ingredient rather, for this flavor of the week, there are multiple things happening in the sky and the cosmos, but the one that I was led to focus on is Mercury moving into the sign of Taurus. Okay, so Mercury moving into Taurus. I've talked about Mercury before with relationships to the Mercury retrogrades, but Mercury entering into a new sign, we might feel or sense or notice a shift in energy. Anytime planets change signs in the sky, then there is a shift in energy that we might experience in our personal lives or that we might see reflective in the collective zeitgeist or consciousness, right? So, a few things to note about Mercury in the sign of Taurus is one, thoughts and communications slow down. So, I mentioned Taurus being a slow energy, or maybe I haven't. Maybe this is the first time I'm mentioning that. But I think when the sun was in Taurus, I might have said it as well. So thoughts and communications slow down. Pretty much everything slows down when it enters the sign of Taurus. Taurus is like the hold up, hold your horses sign, okay? And they don't just slow down, but thoughts and communication can become more measured and methodical. So this is actually beneficial when we think about Mercury being a planet of thoughts and communications and details and ideas. It's good sometimes to make sure that we're really dotting our I's and crossing our T's and really being thorough in how we think about something and digging deeper into something and being organized and methodical with all the information and the thoughts and the communication. So, what I'm sort of getting right now is this could be an opportunity to organize your filing cabinet or to organize your documents on your desktop or in your organize the files on your computer, right? And that is also somewhat Virgo energy. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, just like Gemini, but being an earth sign, it is that very analytical, logical, practical mind. And then I'm also feeling the energy of Mercury in Taurus as thoughts becoming things. And that's where the idea of the flowering mind comes from, or the mental flora. Not just having thoughts, but seeing more tangibly how those thoughts translate or manifest or lead to things changing in our external reality, actual physical things being birthed from thought, whether it be a jewelry box that someone creates that was based on thoughts that they've had, or a relationship that starts based on a way of thinking or a mental process, right? And so, flowers of the mind, thoughts becoming things. And I mentioned last week, I think, Taurus being the sign of manifestation, Mercury being the planet of thoughts and communication. So, I think this is a good opportunity to really focus on and think about how our thoughts and words and communications will lead to some concrete change or some physical manifestation or some observable development in our reality. Okay. And also, I'll just say too that I mentioned last week Taurus being a very fertile sign. And because of this, what we focus on mentally, we might see like exponential growth. I'm always getting like weeds or wildflowers, right? Like how wildflowers just grow really, really rapidly, like dandelions and blue bonnets, which we have a lot of here in the DFW area, right? And so we might see a sprinkling or a scattering of those things just like cropping up or popping up. Okay. The other thing that came out with with the flavor of the week has to do with the tarot card that I pulled, which is the Five of Wands. This is one tarot deck that features flowers very prominently. It's called the Antique Anatomy Tarot deck. And all of the cards have flowers on them, I believe, or some type of plant life. So some of them are, it's just like green leaves, but most of the cards also have some type of flower on it. And so with that deck, being in line with the theme, I chose it to pull a card to add an extra ingredient or an extra dimension to the flavor of the week. And so the 5 of Wands is typically seen as a difficult card, not always a comfortable card, and it has to do with friction. And so I was thinking when the 5 of Wands came out, okay, some of these flowers might have thorns on them. So as beautiful and as interesting and colorful and vibrant and lush as the flowers of our minds might be, some of the flowers that bloom and blossom from our minds while Mercury is in Taurus might also have thorns on them, right? And we think about how not all thoughts are healthy thoughts. Not all communication is loving and tender and thoughtful communication, right? And so we want to be mindful of that for ourselves, but also just acknowledge or be observant and cognizant that if other people are projecting thoughts onto us or communicating in a harsh or abrasive way, that um, this could be part of the challenge of Mercury going through the sign of Taurus. Okay. And so I'll say that Mercury doesn't like to go slow. So part of the reason why Mercury in Taurus can be somewhat challenging anyway is that Mercury is like fast, quicksilver, right? Like Mercury in the mythology was like really, really swift and could agile and could turn on a dime, right? And that it's hard to do that in Taurus. And so Mercury is kind of like, oh, I can't go as fast as I want. So you have some of that friction, some of that tension and resistance. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Not all friction is bad. Not all tension is bad. Not all resistance is bad, right? And so Mercury has an opportunity here to say, well, yeah, I know I really, really like to go fast, but there's also some benefit in slowing down every now and then, okay? The other thing that I thought about when this 5 of Wands came out that might come up while Mercury is in Taurus has to do with what it's like traveling on a smooth paved road versus traveling through the grass or driving. I should be more specific. Driving through grass or driving through gravel or driving over a dirt road, right? And so our cars are designed to be like on paved roads, right? They're best built to navigate smooth paved roads. But sometimes it's necessary to drive through the grass or to drive through gravel or to drive through dirt roads and sometimes even muddy roads. And that can be somewhat challenging. That creates more friction. The car does not move as easily through those environments. And that's kind of the comparison of Mercury being in an air sign or a fire sign versus being in an earth sign, specifically Taurus, because it is an energy that's fixed earth. So it's like really, really solid and really, really likes to go slow. All right. The other thing that we have each segment for the weekly refill is the divinity message. And most often, the divinity message, TEA, is closely related to the flavor of the week. And this one I pulled from the same deck, and I actually have the deck out this time. It's a deck of cards that's about this big. And it has different categories like work and career, dream home, health and well-being, money and prosperity, love and relationships, etc. Right? So the card that came out this time was about spiritual development, which is pretty exciting. Spiritual development, one of my favorite aspects or favorite categories of this deck of affirmations. And the message, the particular card, the affirmation on it was, I open to receive messages, signs, and guidance from my guardian angels. And I love this one. I do think it's right in line with the flavor of the week because we're talking about communication, messages, thoughts, and particularly the slowing down of those things, being measured and methodical. And what I'm getting with the connection between that and this spiritual development affirmation is that when we slow our minds down, we open our minds to receiving divine inspiration, divine communication, being able to listen to our higher self or our guardian angels or that spiritual wisdom, whatever it is for you. So for everybody, it's different. And actually, I was thinking as I was prepping for this segment about how no, everyone has their own unique way or language of communicating with divine, with God, with the universe, with ancestors and guardian angels. There's no one size fits all method or form of communication. And so it's really important that we take the time to develop our own unique signature, our own, and actually scientifically and linguistically, professional linguists can identify a person based on their language patterns, based on their speech patterns, based on like the tone of their voice, like voice recognition software. And so similarly, our spiritual communication and the messages and signs that we get and receive from the universe and the spirit realm is uniquely yours, right? And it can't be mimicked or perfectly matched. Now, are there similar tools? Absolutely. Are there similar like foundational things? Perhaps, right? And so just like there might be similar fingerprints, but no exact same fingerprints, it's the same way with how we communicate. And so I think Mercury moving through Taurus and having to be more mindful of our thoughts and be more mindful of how we communicate and what we're communicating, both listening and hearing and speaking, then there's a potential, there's an opportunity there for those of us that are interested in being able to listen and hear guidance from our spiritual sources, our spiritual team, then this could be a good season to do that, right? Where our minds are slowing down, maybe meditation as a way to slow down the mind, right? Or whatever works for you. And there are various forms of meditation even. So, all right. Before we get into the poetry, the pastry and poetry segment, I want to share a little bit about drsarahscafe.com. The website is officially up, folks, and I'm really, really excited about that. It's been up for a while, but I've been working on it behind the scenes. And so this is a secret. It's not really a secret because it's here on YouTube, but because this YouTube channel is so new and my audience is relatively small still, I see it as a soft launch of the website because I'm not announcing this on my 1,500 person email list. I'm not announcing this on my Instagram page, which has 30 something thousand followers, right? I'm only announcing it here on this YouTube channel that is still very, very small relative to other YouTube channels, at least. And so I'm implicitly making it a soft launch for a select few early adopters, as we might say, people who are ahead of the curve in terms of being with me on this journey. You all are getting privy to all of this before the vast majority of people in my other communities on my other platforms. So again, I appreciate you all for being here so early in this journey, in this adventure. And because of that, I am going to be sharing with you more of the behind the scenes, more of the development of this virtual cafe, soon to be in-person brick and mortar cafe. Okay. So the cafe in general is going to have multiple pieces to it. There will be the cafe part where we can buy coffee and tea and pastries, but there'll also be a bookstore attached and a boutique attached. So visit drsarahscafe.com because all three of those sections are up and running. They are not at full capacity yet. They're not the final version of what they will grow into be. It's still very much a baby at this point, but I want to invite you all to the website to browse, to engage. For some of you, you will definitely find some interesting things. Others of you, I welcome your feedback as click on the site and think about what you would like to see there, what you would like to see more of, what kinds of coffee and tea brands you like. The cafe piece, you can currently buy coffee and tea from various brands. The bookstore, I have affiliate links to places where you can buy some of my favorite books. In the boutique, I sell, again, my t-shirts. I did not plan to wear the t-shirt today. I did not even know I was recording this video today, but I finished planning out the refill early and I decided to go ahead and record it so that it'd be ready and on time for you all. Okay, now let's get into the pastry and poetry of the week. This pastry and poetry is brought to us by Rita Dove, Rita Dove, African American woman poet, and the pastry that that's going with Rita Dove's poem is scones. And I've used scones before, specifically blueberry scones, but these are cinnamon scones. I love cinnamon scones. One of my favorite coffee shops in town is a place called Java Lounge, and they have the most delicious cinnamon scones. So we're going to eat cinnamon scones, ideally, and read the poem Fantasy and Science Fiction by Rita Dove. And I picked fantasy and science fiction as the poem from this collection that I have here. It's called Grace Notes by Rita Dove. This is a book that I bought in Springfield, Illinois. You see here the the live Springfield, Illinois Central Library. So there were a few good things that came from my time in Central Illinois. But the reason I picked fantasy and science fiction as the poem for the pastry and poetry is because of this idea of the flowering mind and mental flora, and how a lot of that, our thoughts, we can not just think regular mundane thoughts, but we can really lean into our imagination. And it is from our imagination, especially our intentional imagination, or some people might call it visualization or fantasizing, i.e., fantasy and science fiction. And all of the results from that, all of the fruits from that, all of the flowering of those thoughts and minds. And what I've told students before is that everything that exists was created first as a thought, was first a thought in someone's mind. The table, the lamp, the desk, the tripod, the microphone, the pen, the highlighter, the bottle of lotion, the mug, the water bottle, the tarot decks, the beautiful ceramic bowls, the camera, the phone, the wooden picks, the water fountain, the couch. Okay. Yes, I'm listing off things that are in my office. But everything, this t-shirt, these earrings, all of these things started as thoughts, started with an imagination, being able to see something or conceive of something in your mind, and then it became reality. And people, I think, dismiss, or they think it's like, oh, what do you call it? I don't know the exact phrase, but they think it's maybe naive to think that thoughts are that powerful. But thoughts can become things, and all things began as thoughts. Even if you think about the natural world, and if you believe in divine creation of that natural world, right? A lot of people, a lot of cultures, a lot of groups of people, and a lot of individuals believe that even the universe itself, the natural world itself, began as a thought in the mind of the creator, right? In the mind of God, whichever version of that, or that myth or that narrative that comes from your culture, right? It's different for all cultures, but it very often began as a thought. And there is like a reflection of the creator in us, right? If you believe you were made in God's image, then God is a creator, and therefore we are also creative beings inherently, right? That is one of the traits or aspects of God, of the creator, that we have as a reflection of that being, that entity, is that we can also create. We are also creative. We are also creators of things and events and experiences. So the power of imagination, the power of thoughts become things, and we get to delight in, hopefully we get to delight in, especially with intention, the flowers that bloom from our thoughts and our imaginations. And Mercury in Taurus is in my 12th house. So it's especially like a subconscious thing. If you're really interested in astrology, then you can take a peek at your own birth chart to see where Taurus is for you specifically. And you can kind of get more clarity on what part of your life might be most impacted or most felt during this season. Okay, so let's get into the poem itself, Fantasy and Science Fiction by Rita Dove, from her anthology, Grace Notes. On my knees in the dark, I looked out the front door of my parents' house and across the street saw an identical stoop, the porthole glass wreathed in pine boughs with a flat red bow. I knew if I crossed the street and entered, taking living room, stairwell, and landing in reverse, I'd end up on my knees in a house my parents never owned nor dreamed of owning, in the dark, not daring to open my eyes. The skyscraper was happy, alone, willow like, on the edge of the frontier, nestled in oak and Iroquois. Its elevators whooshed and chimed in the sky, ionized indigo, readied for the storm. Moccasins inched closer while far away in a field, Ben and his silver key make history. And the skyscraper, suddenly aware of its goofy reverie, is swallowed into mud like a godhead. Give the village idiot back. His rose, why tease a stupid boy? So what if it's a full-blown green? Children are always imagining things, sometimes shutting a book and rising. You can walk off the back porch and into the sea, though it's not the sort of story you tell your mother. So this is a very simple poem, very straightforward poem. I am excited to be able to introduce Rita Dove to some of you and remind others of you about Rita Dove as a poet, as a relatively known poet for people who study African American lit in particular, and just American lit, art poetry. But this poem speaks directly to the process of imagination. And I like that it says children are always imagining things, because most of the people watching this video are not children. And sometimes we hesitate to lean into imagination. We hesitate to lean into daydreaming. We hesitate to lean into a fantasy or being engaged in creative thoughts and allowing our minds to just wander into this sort of reverie, right? Because it's been associated with childishness or not being mature or being immature. And there's sort of the stigma around adults who are very imaginative, or being an adult and having a really rich inner world to create worlds in your own mind, right? And so being willing and having the courage to step back into that childlike sense of wonder and allowing yourself to lean into the imaginative power that is truly yours. Before I go, I'll give you a takeaway, or to-go cup, which says, "My mind is fertile and I'm intentional about what I plant in it." My mind is fertile and I'm intentional about what I plant in it. Now, I love this because our minds are fertile. Our minds are like soil. And what we plant in our mind, or what we allow to be planted in our mind, will have results in our life. That's the flowers of what's been planted in our mind. And knowing that, how can we be more intentional about what's planted in our minds, specifically being proactive about planting the things we want to see take root and flower and bloom and blossom in our lives in the near future or the distant future. And on that note, my dear friends, I hope this weekly refill helped you to refill your spiritual cup. And I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.